Now, welcome back. Before we took the commercial break, Mheshimiwa Kirwa here had something he wanted to clarify about the issue of his presidential candidate.
Yeah, I just wanted to...
And here you're talking about Mheshimiwa Raila Odinga.
Yeah, Mheshimiwa Raila Odinga, 72, but is more energetic than those under 60. Number two, in Africa, out of 54 countries...
What is the measure here? He's more energetic than those under 60.
The number of activities he can undertake in a week, compared to our friends who disappear. They come and read a speech on a public holiday. Now, secondly, in Africa, out of 54 countries, more than 26 have their presidents above 70. So there is no contradiction whatsoever. And we do not elect people in terms of age, we elect people in terms of experience. And there is this misnomer. Jubilee has been saying experience is a redundancy. Experience is the requisite ingredient that is required for people to perform. So you cannot bring in experienced people and you say, okay, because we have not had a chance to work, give us a chance now to work.
Would you be okay with having an experienced person?
I have absolutely no issue with the age of the former premier for this country.
But why are you talking about the cash transfer? He does not need that cash transfer.
I basically related that issue of the cash transfer to the age of the former premier. I have no issue with his age.
So you believe with age
not belabor this point.
We are not belaboring, we just want to defend the age
of his president. There's no problem with that.
So with age comes experience.
Well, I will not say that, because we are people who are old but do disastrous things.
And then we have people who are equally young and do disastrous things.
Well, that one is there, but it's not related to the president.
Let's move on, gentlemen. Before, earlier on, we had not received the Star, but I have just received a copy, and it's got quite an interesting headline there. Court ruling is a recipe for disaster. This is a quote referred to by the chairman of the IEBC, Mheshimiwa Wafula Chebukati, who apparently, according to this story, has an issue with the announcement, the declaration of presidential results announced at constituency level as being final. The commission chairman says, and is quoted here, "I was dismayed by that ruling for the simple reason that presidential results are supposed to be announced at the National Tallying Center by the National Returning Officer, who is the chairman of IEBC." Chris.
I want to say that first and foremost, I would like to congratulate the judiciary for that wonderful ruling, because one, it is going to heal. When you look at the critical report, it is very, very clear when you look at that report. And one of the critical issues we've had when it comes to elections, people have been starving votes. You remember the Tarakanidi issue? The votes come, they reach somewhere in...
you mentioned
absolutely, yeah. I want you to listen, because it comes from the... And particularly at that time...
Because there's no proof in what he's saying whatsoever.
You know, if you look
because for a long time we've been having
I'll give you a chance to explain.
You'll be given a chance. You see, maybe he doesn't pay attention to what goes on. If you listen to Kathy Kilonzo, you know, I'm one person who listens carefully, contributes objectively. In her submissions during the presidential petition at the Supreme Court, it is in the public domain. When the votes were coming, they reached somewhere on Thika Road, they multiplied. The time they reached Bomas, these were not the votes that were at the constituency level. So it is indeed critical that when you announce the elections at that time at the constituency level, people will not have opportunity of manipulating them as you wait for it to come to Bomas. Let it be declared in Bomas, but it must be... There must be some consistency.
Chairman here says this is a recipe for chaos.
So, no, when you talk of recipe for chaos...
I understand his argument, because if in my polling station, the total for presidential candidate Mr. Kirwa here is 10,000, and he emerges the winner in that polling station.
Let me explain.
Then you tell me that Chris Wamalwa, who had 300 in this polling station, is the winner.
No, I don't think so. What he meant here is this. This is for purposes of being honest, being objective. If in a constituency like Kiminini, Raila Odinga, let's say, has gotten, in Kiminini constituency, has gotten 30,000. And President Uhuru Kenyatta has gotten 5,000. Whatever they've declared at that constituency level must be able to reflect what is at the national level. And if at all you don't announce it at the constituency level, you give room for manipulation. So that when it comes here, it will be they can even turn the opposite. Now Uhuru gets 30,000 and President Uhuru gets I mean, President Uhuru gets 30,000 and the other one is declared the other way. So why it is official for purposes of checking any discrepancy that might be there, so that we don't have this manipulation, voter stuffing and whatever it is. So when it comes to issues of chaos, why should it be chaos? It is the responsibility of the government. The police are there. If anybody is bringing anarchy, wants to bring confusion, the police should take care of that. But for purposes of accuracy, the purposes of avoiding rigging, we salute the judiciary. And I'm telling the chairman Chebukati to look at that ruling. If he has appealed, of course, as NASA, we'll also go into this. And we should be able to go and defend, so that these results, we don't have a Tharaka Nithi issue. So that the same thing that is at the constituency is the same thing at the national level.
You keep referring to Tharaka Nithi and
Mheshimiwa Chris Wamalwa, with all due respect, you do not lie to Kenyans, confidently and shouting. It is not in order. First and foremost, you owe an apology to Tharaka Nithi people, the Tharaka Nithi County people, for having a reference in terms of staffing on ballot boxes.
Apparently,
I'll explain to him why.
Now let him
when he talks about staffing of ballot papers, he is absolutely living in another era. Today, since the new dispensation, the votes are never transported anywhere, even to Nairobi or wherever the place they may be, except for storage much later. So when he talks about ballot papers that are normally stuffed halfway between Tharaka Nithi and Nairobi, somewhere in Thika, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Because what is normally transferred is usually transmission results electronically.
They've amended the law. They amended the law
electronically.
It was amended.
Therefore, when you transfer results electronically,
I have asked you this question in this forum before.
Yes.
And now that Chris has raised it, I'll give you a chance to clear it again. What really happens? Why the Tharaka Nithi
is everywhere?
These days, whenever somebody talks about
I will bring into light what happened in 2007. When Mheshimiwa...
That was the genesis.
Yes, that was the genesis of the problem, because that time ODM seemed to have been having the upper hand before the Tharaka Nithi vote came in. And that time it was actually not the whole of Tharaka Nithi, it was the Nithi constituency, which is it was very big. Nowadays it's been split into Mara and Chuka Gambangombe. And therefore when the votes came, because as we don't vote casually, we vote facing Mount Kenya, religiously. Meaning that everybody comes out. When it comes to voting, we are serious people. And therefore, because we had voting of about 97%, and they could not understand how one constituency brought in over 100,000 votes. And that was the problem. That is what tipped the scale at that time. And just because it was the last, the straw that broke a camel's back.
And it came much after Turkana had come in.
They remember that as what denied them the win, and therefore they're very bitter about it. But Tharaka Nithi people are very innocent people. They just did what they had to do.
They just voted religiously.
Yeah, they just voted. Nothing else.
Chris, let's hear about Chebukati.
Well, I have a lot of...
Sorry, Mheshimiwa Kiro.
Yes, my other name was Chris before I dropped it.
Is it?
So there's no problem. And he is my neighbor.
I know that.
Yes. So my worry is what the chairman of the IBC is saying is actually doing something against the Constitution. It is clear in the Constitution, and being a lawyer, he knows better than I do, that the Constitution is very clear on how results are supposed to be declared, and that is the position we are going to hold. Now, it's not about the carton of votes being transferred to Nairobi. This information is, there is a form that all the agents of the presidential candidates will sign, and that is the information that is declared at the constituency level. Once it has been declared, you can even do a WhatsApp and you send to your tallying center that in Kiminini we have gotten 47,000 votes for President Raila. And Uhuru has gotten 7,000 votes. And we close the chapter.
You've already made him president?
Well, he's our presidential candidate for all practical purposes. So that is what we are telling Chebukati to do. There is no disaster. If the information from Kiminini is the same information at Bomas, where is the disaster?
Yeah.
At times we create disaster in our own minds for convenience.
Thank you very much. I am sure the chairman, Mheshimiwa Wafula Chebukati, will be making more clarification on this, on exactly what he meant. But I want us to move on, gentlemen, before we look at the party primaries, the chaos that were in. Remember the men in black attacking the ODM tribunal sitting somewhere in Nairobi. Remember the issue at Sare, whose ruling will be made later on today. And of course the NASA retreat, some place at the coast. But I want us to look at the story that is on the back page of the Daily Nation, and the one that is on page 5 of the Business Daily. Now on the back page of the Daily Nation, working mothers could spend at least 6 months with their newborns if an amendment to the Employment Act that seeks to increase maternity leave is adopted. Buri Member of Parliament Kinoti Gatobu is proposing the law to provide for an option to extend maternity leave by another 3 months without pay. Currently, of course, we all know that working mothers have up to 3 months to go on leave and stay with their newborns. Now, the Business Daily on page 5 has a story about a proposal. It's actually a bill on breastfeeding at workplace. This is drafted by Muranga County Member of Parliament Sabina Chege, who now wants employers to provide breastfeeding stations that include fridges and breast pumps for expressing milk. Gentlemen, I know you are not mothers, but you are fathers. Your take on this?
Well, first of all, let me congratulate the two members of parliament for thinking in a proactive way. Some countries, in fact, maternity leave is 1 year.
Yeah.
And it is not going against any international conventions. It is something that we must encourage our mothers, because those in the know tell us breastfeeding a baby up to 6 months gives him high or her high immunity, and also gives him capacity to deal with issues even later on in life. Some of us must have breastfed for more than 2 years because our mothers were at home, they were not working. And that explains the capacity of people like Chris and Mheshimiwa Muthomi.
How does this fit with the issue of employers and profits?
Yeah. Now,
the cost of production and stuff.
Exactly. I think it's a wonderful idea. When you look at some of the WHO recommendations, you find that one of the key recommendations is continuous breastfeeding, the minimum of 6 months. Okay, this gives the baby immunity, and it has a very positive correlation in terms of how healthy that person is going to be in future. You find that most of the people, when you look at their background, people who fall sickly most of the time, and at young age, people who are breastfed maybe only 1 month, 2 weeks, or when you grow up, those issues of weaknesses are
more vulnerable.
Absolutely, you're more vulnerable. And this issue, it's already been happening in this country. I think Safaricom, at one time, you know, I've been a teacher, has been teaching at the university, and we do case studies, analysis of some good corporates. And if I remember very well, I think Safaricom had that provision, so that as a mother, and by the way, I speak right now, I'm also a father of a young baby daughter, about 8 months or so.
Did he take leave?
No, there's provision for my paternity leave.
Did you take your paternity leave?
But in my community where I come from, you know, now when you go for paternity leaves, it might reflect something differently. But I've been there with my children. I'm a very good father. I take care of my family, and I'm close. Even when I was in Brussels,
so you're in agreement with
I agree, but the issue is sustainability. When it comes to the private sector, and this is simple. You know, the moment now, from 3 months was good enough. The moment you go to 6 months, the man hours, the productivity time is going to be reduced. So the issue is it sustainable? You know, there's that issue of sustainability.
In the proposal, the second 3 months is without pay.
Now, again, when we're without pay, are you going to say you will bring somebody to be employed at that particular time to do your job, to cover the manner, the hours, the lost hours, and that person is coming new? You know, he must be trained, and being trained is also a cost. You know, the mistakes this person is going to do. So there are good proposals, yes, but the challenge is sustainability. As far as I'm concerned, 3 months is good enough. It's a good proposal, but the moment you extend it, and if somebody comes to do the job, let me say you are a CEO somewhere, or you're a finance director, and you bring in someone, the extra 3 months that you're not going to work, this person, there are different policies of the company for him to learn, to catch up, the mistakes he's going to do. Actually, it cannot work.
By the time
so
they
when this
finish
matter
learning-
comes to the floor of the moment they finish learning, you are told, go back. I'm back to my job. It is not sustainable.
Quite
So
interesting.
let's work with the 3 months. It's a wonderful idea, yes, but it's not sustainable.
Mheshimiwa Njuki, considering the fact that there have been allegations that there are employers who are even hesitant to employ young ladies who have the potential to be mothers, is this going to be a disadvantage to our female colleagues?
Absolutely. And I want to say this is a populist move by the Member of Parliament for Bori, because it is not
And they have
practical.
young babies, both of them,
They're not practical.
just like me.
They're not practical because when you propose 6 months with no pay,
No, 3 months without
three months without any pay, then that is going to have an effect on the income of these young mothers who are having babies in this particular case. 3 months, it's good enough. If it is coupled very well with the provision to have these mothers bring their babies for breastfeeding at work, it is cheaper for the companies to provide what Safaricom has, you know, some form of nursery, where you at break time you can breastfeed you.
So you'd rather, instead of the 6 months
Yes.
maternity leave, you give them 3 months and provide this facility?
Yes, that is much cheaper, and it's more. It's a win-win situation for all of us, even the company itself. And I like the way you put it, because as much as we may want to say yes, it's a human right, most companies, especially the private sector, they become very hesitant when we have this period extended to employ people who have potential to have babies. You know, clearly the youth, as we are talking about youth employment, we do not want to have youth who cannot later be able to have families because they are covered by the type of jobs they do. We want them to be free in this particular case.
Remember,
but we
Kenya
want
is
to have a company where you have very good performing officers, especially ladies. You have maybe 6 of them enrolled in a department, and then one time, because you
They
don't
all
have,
go on
you don't have,
maternity.
yes, you go on maternity. What happens in that department?
Quite a tricky situation. Remember, Kenya is one of the countries that are signatories to the Sustainable Development Goals, one of which is to ensure the transition into older age of children who are very vulnerable, 1 year to childbirth to 5 years, who are vulnerable to disease attacks and all the rest, bring down mortality rates. One of the ways to bring that down is through, of course, breastfeeding, to ensure that.
Let me ask you a question. Like
I will
you guys,
answer you now
guys
that
in
you
Royal
have-
Media, you guys in Royal Media, of course we've seen your colleagues who are presenters here going on maternity. Has it been a planned, because you get some, like the presenters, can you sustain the 6 months? Is it sustainable?
It's their right. Into politics. Nursery treats at the coast.
Well,
Is the house on fire?
well, I think that is a fertile imagination of our detractors. They went to deal with the housekeeping issues. Of course, you see, after launching, unveiling the team, they need to do a bit of housekeeping. Are we going to strategize in terms of reaching out to our voters, reaching out to the voters of the other side to come to our side, and the whole campaign exercise, and also to deal with the logistics and some of the fallout from nomination.
A lot has been said about you people dangling provisions that are not there in the constitution. Somebody actually said you have offered Chama cha Mashinani an assistant minister's position.
Well, what they don't understand, in our constitution we don't have that position of assistant minister. Let them read first Article 10, which is talking about values and principles of power sharing as a constitutional matter. And that was what we anchored our power sharing arrangement. Together read with Article 131, Article 132 and Article 152. All of them read together. And also remember, the spirit of this coalition is that we are colleagues. There's no difference between Raila and Wetangula, between Ruto and Kalonzo, between Musalia and Raila. They are all colleagues, and they feel the agenda of Kenya is greater than the agenda of any single individual among them. And the position that was offered to Mashinani is a position that is commensurate with their own capacity in terms of issues of devolution and issues of ensuring that the functions that have been devolved are midwiped, so that there is anchorage between the policy direction at the national level and the implementation at the county level. And it doesn't necessarily go to Isaac. It goes to Mashinani, and it is for Mashinani to say how does that position go to any other position.
I'll come back so that you explain that, as well as you mentioned that they are colleagues. 2002, Mwai Kibaki and the summit were colleagues until after Mheshimiwa Kibaki was sworn in at Uhuru Park. Then hell broke loose. You'll explain that to us.
Okay.
Mheshimiwa Muthoni Njuki, what do you take of this arrangement by NASA and their sudden retreats?
You know, I am also a colleague to President Uhuru Kenyatta in this particular case. You know, I'm trying to equate his the stature of Raila Odinga with the one of Wetangula. You know, they are comforting themselves that we are colleagues. First and foremost, I absolutely dismiss this arrangement of NASA in terms of power sharing and trying to convince Kenyans they have anything for them in terms of delivering change. First and foremost, you cannot share positions that don't exist. That they say that we are going hunting, and when we get the chicken, you are the one who will take the tail, and the tail does not exist. Not the chicken, but the ostrich.
Which position doesn't exist here?
The one of the premier cabinet, I have not seen it in the constitution. I've read the constitution. I am in parliament. We go through those things every other time. I have never seen that position anyway. So if it exists in their minds, and that's the one they are dangling to the Luhya community, then these people are being duped.
Does the president have a constitutional mandate to appoint a cabinet?
Yes, of course.
And he can decide which cabinet position is superior to which one.
That he cannot do, because in the constitution,
no, in the
all the cabinet they say. You know, the premier, you know, let's not twist things. We do not have a position of a premier cabinet in our constitution, period. Whether it is going to be crafted, then that will require a constitutional referendum. And in this particular case, you cannot go to Kenyans with that as a carrot you're dangling to them. Yet it does not exist.
Chris,
let us have something sensible. And then, before we go into that, all the people who are in expecting position in NASA, including Wetangula and my friend Ruto, I do not understand. Yes, Isaac Ruto. How Ruto is looking forward to being a governor, and at the same time is going to be a deputy cabinet premier. You cannot hold two positions.
Kiro just explained that here. That position is reserved, if I had you right,
for Mashinani.
Not
the only position. There are more than
Chama Mashinani, that's different. But in this particular case, he says he has been promised
Isaac is the face of Mashinani. The way Wetangula is the face of Fort Kenya.
Well, it says it's provision that is even more carrots being dangled, because they're being told, I will fight for this position, but I'm not the one who's going to take it. I'll give it to somebody else. You know,
I want to
talk to us about the premier cabinet position.
I want to explain this position so that I want my brother from Chuka Magombe to listen carefully. And here, you look at Article 132 of the Constitution and Article 152 of the Constitution. There are two different things which is confusing. We have the parliamentary system and the presidential system. At the moment, we have the presidential system.
Correct.
If we want to go to the parliamentary system, that is when we must go for a referendum. But when it comes to these premier positions, you don't need an amendment. These are just CSS. But through the executive order number 1, when Raila Odinga becomes the president, it's that executive order which gives room for these cabinet secretaries. We are not saying those premier are not CSS. They are CSS. But the president has powers. The same way in Uhuru government, you realize Waiguru was actually more like a premier.
No, I don't.
That's what you need to know. So in this case, listen. In this case, when you look at those provisions of the Constitution, the 152 and 132, particularly, it gives room to the president, and in his executive order number 1, he'll say so and so is going to be the premier CS.
The prefect.
Remember, he has not said the prefects. And as Mheshimiwa Kiru has put it, it does not mean Isaac Ruto is going to get that position. He can designate it to somebody, and CCM is the chairman of CCM, as a matter of fact, comes from Marsabit. They can decide Isiolo, absolutely. That chairman from Isiolo, Mohamed Guled, can be the deputy premier at the same time when Isaac Ruto will be the governor of Bomet. So these things, let me tell you one thing. Jubilee is panicking.
Yes.
And What's the problem when you look at Article 10 of the Constitution, which talks about national values and principles of governance?
Yes.
Talks about inclusivity.
Yeah.
Here is inclusivity of 5 people, Pentagon, and the one of 2 people. Which one is better? Is it of the 2 people, Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto?
The Jubilee government and the
they're only 2, and here we're having 5.
The president was quoted as saying that the Jubilee government brings together everybody from every corner of the country.
No, not really. This is about
the NASA arrangement. No, I'm just quoting. The NASA arrangement is bringing together 5 people who are sharing.
What I'm saying, it is wrong.
positions.
It is wrong because at the top, we only have the president and the deputy. In terms of the
But is what provided in the Constitution.
Yeah, but
the president and the deputy president.
Let me finish. Can I finish, please?
Please explain to us, as you finish, explain to us the executive order so that Mheshimiwa and myself and others can understand.
You know, when it comes to matters of the law, we have the Constitution, we have the statutes,
Yes.
and we have the regulations. So that executive order, just the same way it happened in the U.S. When Donald Trump won the elections, he issued an executive order to repeal the Obamacare. That is an executive order. And this gives you powers in line with the Constitution as you constitute your government.
So this is the same authority the president uses to decide we are going to have cabinet secretary in charge of industrialization.
Exactly. So within that provision, there's no harm anywhere. So His Excellency Raila Amolo Odinga, as he wins in August, he'll issue that executive order. And
create this
absolutely. Because we are still presidential, will not be parliamentary. If it's an issue of moving away from presidential to parliamentary, then it is when we're required to go for a referendum.
I want to come to you,
Mheshimiwa Kiroti. In this case, we're not. Yeah. Lastly, about our principals who are meeting in costs. This is housekeeping. And this shows it is being consultative and participatory. This is a good spirit that, you know, they are still together. It's not a one-man show or a two-man show. So it is in the interest of continuous consultation and participation in decision-making. Now that we've finished the nominations, they are still together again, consulting, part of bonding, to show we are moving together as a united front.
So it's normal housekeeping.
There's no more housekeeping. There's nothing like firefighting. No, it's the good spirit. And we encourage them as it continues. There's also this continuous consultation.
There's no problem. They can do retreats and in the moon or in coast. It's not really a problem. But where do you have housekeeping when we have hotly contested climate? You know, in politics at the moment. My thinking, and that is what is being rumored around, is that they have gone to cool the heat of the fallout that are coming out. Because we have people who are out there saying, and I'll quote Mheshimiwa Nyenze, who said, I do not understand, in between our meeting and Uhuru Park, where Kalonzo Musyoka was convinced to agree to take the second position. So we still have people out there. Hold on a minute. We still have people out there. We still have people out there who have their misgivings about the whole of this situation. However, I want Kenyans to listen, and listen very carefully to what Chris Wamalwa said. And that you're going to begin a president who is going to be having to rule this country through executive orders and executive decisions, not based on the Constitution as per.
No.
Let's be careful. Very careful about it.
Now?
Yeah. Definitely, with Uhuru Kenyatta follows Constitution to the letter. That is why everything is normally brought to Parliament for us to be able to.
Our friend is to be assisted. One, if a potential governor becomes a rumamonga, that's dangerous, because that's what he said, that he's relying on rumors. Number two, executive order is part of government business. When the president releases what we call government dispatch, outlining various portfolios in his government and responsibilities, is actually using his executive order. So that is the beginning. Now you asked me about the difference between MOU that we signed, and I was a member of the summit, and I thank God.
Colleagues in 2002
we were
colleagues in 2017.
Now this time round, the other one was a gentleman's agreement. This one is anchored on the law. Remember, the law provides for coalitions of parties. And when you subscribe to a coalition, you have already tied yourself within the law. And the first thing that we did was to organize instruments of coalition, and we deposited with the Registrar of Political Parties. She told us a number of things needed to be completed. One, nomination rules. Two, how you will share political parties' fund after elections. Number three, is what is your power sharing arrangement. Those are the three aspects that we have now deposited, and anybody that will go against this will be acting ultra vires the law. So that is the information my good friend needs, so that he does not continue being Rumamonga, because he is a potential governor of Tharaka Nithi. He's a nice guy.
What do you think about the issue of NASA is all about 5 people sharing?
Yeah. Well, this is the imagination, because you see, why are you bothered about what we are doing? You see, like when Wavinya Ndeti was given a ticket yesterday after winning with over 200,000 votes, my good friend Governor Mutua went to the media complaining about the issues, and yet he was not a candidate for Wiper. He already has his ticket. This is the same problem with Jubilee. Why are they bothered about how we are going to arrange our government? It is not about 5 people. We have said NASA is about those of us who are in it now, and other Kenyans who feel there is need for a transformative
the
agenda.
Argument, both to you, Mheshimiwa Chris and Mheshimiwa Kirwa, the argument of Jubilee is not being bothered with what you people are doing. The argument is they are telling Kenyans, these people, their agenda is to share posts and not deliver. It's a campaign argument.
But this is the problem. They don't read Article 10. Article 10 is about power sharing. And you see any politician getting out of his house in the morning that he wants to go to politics, and he is not ready to appropriate power, is a confused politician. We want power. The only time, the moment we get power, then we serve the people of Kenya. You cannot expect us to serve people of Kenya when we have no power.
You can use any other.
I wanted to respond on what he said about the issue of...
I think when we are running out of time.
Absolutely. I think what we need to understand here is Jubilee is panicking. It has bankrupt of ideas. So it has reached a level, they want to send that propaganda out. And this is about the 5 people. And them is about the 2 people. So right now, I'm the Deputy Chief Whip in the National Assembly. This is a courtesy of the power sharing. I come from the Ford Kenya side, and this is provided for in the Political Parties Act, whereby it says once you agree, you deposit it with the Register of Political Parties. In this case, as NASA, the agreement was there. I was part and parcel of that with Honorable Kilwa. And I want to salute and congratulate the 12-member committee for the work they did, ban the midnight oil, for us to have a presidential candidate. And you are telling Kenyans, if we are for NASA, you should go for this idea. I spoke to Honorable Nyenze, who is my minority leader, and we are good friends. He's also entitled to his own opinion. That was his opinion. But he said it clearly. He is solidly behind this lineup of Raila Kalonzo, which is going to take Jubilee back home. And that's why they are panicking, coming all over with propaganda here and there. We are telling Kenyans, this is the winning formula.
Let's have a last round of comment. And
don't worry about your power sharing agreements. Kenyans know now, by now, the interest by NASA is to share power, so that they can actually be able to balkanize a few communities and then be able to deliver the seats.
Why do you want to be governor Tharaka Nithi?
Because I want to deliver the seat. It is not about power sharing agreement.
No. Why do you want to be
I want to deliver the service to the people. I want to bring change.
So can you deliver services now?
Power.
Without the seat?
I have to have the seat first.
So you have to have the power first.
The seat first. And I know Charles. You know, most of the time they're normally very objective, but today you've become a NASA. So I have 3 NASA people against 1 Jubilee. Let me put it like this.
Incidentally, last week I was told I have become Jubilee.
Let me put it like this.
I've always known him as a Jubilee fan.
Let me put it like this. In the Jubilee lineup, we do have 2 positions that are already in the constitution, the deputy president and the president, and the rest of the Kenya is in, because Jubilee is a national party. We are everywhere in this country, and we are not bothered about the power sharing in this particular case. We are bothered about making sure the SGR gets to Uganda. We are bothered to make sure the remaining 10,000 kilometers of roads get to the people. On how to get there, as long as we believe in the leadership of the people we have put in place, then we are not bothered about power sharing agreement, and especially those positions that don't exist in the constitution.
You're bothered about how the SGR will reach Uganda.
Yes.
And that is why you're telling Kenyans, Jubilee Tena. Because in that position of power, you can take the railway line to Uganda.
It's not position of power, it's position of service. There's a difference between position of service and position of power.
All right.
To demonstrate that Jubilee shared power, when Uhuru Kenyatta came together with President Uhuru, how they shared power. There were some ministries which were given to Uhuru Kenyatta, and gave others to William Ruto. That's why where we have a minister who is from Uhuru Kenyatta's side, the PS is from the president's side. So they shared power. What this friend of mine is talking about, he's just trying to bring in propaganda, but they shared power. Politics is about power.
Gentlemen, I have just 3 minutes, and I'll give each of you a minute to wind up this.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for this opportunity.
You're welcome.
And number two, it's also good for Kenyans to understand that the 5 gentlemen, in terms of the NASA structure, represent the face of Kenya. Because if you are to give to Fort Kenya, for example, any opportunity, they are not just going to give to somebody from Bungoma, because Wetangula comes from Bungoma. They might give to somebody from Marsabit. Raila has a huge constituency, bigger than that of Uhuru, in terms as a single individual, is going to give not to the people of Nyanza. He's going to give to the people that support him for Coast, Northeastern, Masailand, and so forth. So let us avoid this issue. Let us argue about other issues. Number two, it is also important, because you hear Jubilee people saying, we have done the SGR, we have done this. They are just implementing Vision 2030. It is nothing new that they are doing. They are implementing the program that we did. I was a member of National Social Council, which designed the Vision 2030. And there's nothing innovative that they have been doing. They have been completing Kibaki's projects, and they say we have done 6,000 kilometers of road.
So at least they have completed.
They have completed some of the projects, so they should not boast. And they have been getting taxes. They are not completing because of money from elsewhere. Taxes from our people, and also borrowing on our behalf, making the burden of every child in Kenya today born. When Kibaki left, they could pay 20,000 for every child born. Today, 90,000. And if you give birth to twins, they owe 180,000 shillings to the world and other entities.
Thank you. I want to thank my people of the great people of Kiminini. I'm where I am today because of these great people. I've been away. I was in Europe. I'm back. I want to thank them first for the confidence they've had in me. You know, I went unopposed in terms of nomination.
Even when you are away.
Absolutely. This shows the confidence that they have in me. I'm going to work even extra hard, without fear, without favor. And I'm coming hitting the ground. But I'm telling them, as you continue praying for me, and the greater Trans Nzoia constituency, which is actually another zone. Watch this space. NASA is the next government. We are going to work extra hard to deliver this. Despite the issues we had in terms of nominations, we are telling them, those who lost, please support those who won. It's like what the Bible says, in my Father's house, there's room for everybody. Even those who didn't go through. As we form the government, it's big government, they are going to be accommodated.
Thank you.
Do not be cheated by this propaganda of Jubilee.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chris. And we also have a winner here.
Yeah, thank you. I would like also to take this opportunity to, first of all, thank you, the panelists. Christopher Arab Kirwa. I don't know what is happening to him nowadays. This man used to be independent, you know, he used to be autonomous. This is the only man who could rebel against Moi. I don't know whether it is age that has actually...
I'm rebelling against you.
to the position of actually being made to become a sycophant of
He's not a
the NASA
sycophant.
people. But I still respect him. He has very brilliant ideas.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, I've been serving with him in the committee of PLC, and we do a very good job together. This week we are going somewhere with him, of course, in the committee to do something, and of course you've been wonderful in this particular case, except today when you decided to be too much of NASA.
Last Friday I was too much of Jubilee, so I'm told.
And I want to also, secondly, to thank the people, the great people of the Kanibi County for finding it wise to give me the ticket for Jubilee. And I'm hoping and praying to them that they will still have a repeat of the same in either Vargas, so they can become the governor and represent them not only on the ground but even in the governor's council as per se. And lastly, finally, on the issue of the nominations, I want this to come out very clearly to people like the Kiminini MP who is going back to Parliament. We either erred or somebody somewhere saw a loophole and kept quiet when we were doing the election laws. That this issue of having no party hopping, then creating a room for some assorting to positions through the independent candidates is like watering down the efforts that we had made. Because we are going to have very, very many independent candidates in both in county assembly and in the National Assembly. And that is not what the law was intended for. So the idea of having 3 months period to be able to be an independent candidate before election should have been synchronized with the one for the parties, so that we don't have that gap.
Thank you.
So when you go back to Parliament, my friend, it is important that you make sure that Kenyans have something that they can be able to say these people were serious when they made this. At the moment, it's a serious loophole.
Thank you. Thank you very much. There you are, viewers, our panelists, Mheshimiwa Kipruto Kirwa, former Assistant Minister.
Former Minister.
Former Minister, But you are an Assistant Minister at some point.
I was an Assistant Minister twice, then Minister.
So if I say former Assistant
one
Minister,
of the most powerful ministers at that time. Agriculture.
Former Assistant Minister, former Minister, and current Deputy Leader of ANC.
Thank you.
Mheshimiwa Chris Kilo, Chris Wamalo, Member of Parliament for Kiminini. Thank you very much for your time. And Mheshimiwa Mudomi Njuki, Member of Parliament for Chuka Igamba Ng'ombe and aspiring to be Governor Tharaka Nithi. It was a pleasure having you, gentlemen, as we look at some of the issues that are making headlines. It's raining now in most parts across the country. I will always say, I am saying it today, plant a tree, make a difference. The 2nd day of May 2017. My name is Charles Odhiambo. Power Breakfast continues.